everybody, welcome back to another video. Today, this is the first time that I'm going to do something like this, but I'm going to explain when did 205 Live die. 205 Live is not canceled yet, but this is the day, well, not really the day, but the time period where it really became just a show that really was just crappy. So, in 2016, after the Cruiserweight Cup, I'm pretty sure that is what it's called, but TJ Perkins won the tournament and won the Cruiserweight Championship in the finals against Grand Metalik. Now, TJP is not in the company anymore because he was fired in 2019 and left for Impact Pro Wrestling. And Grand Metalik is one of the only real members of the roster who were who were from that era of 205 Live that are still on. And one big thing that I want to say is that most of the Cruiserweight Champions have been fired from their WWE contracts. And I will talk about that later, but I'm going to start talking about this. So after the WWE draft was made, they made the Cruiserweight division. And the Cruiserweight division was on Raw. Well, SmackDown was just SmackDown. And going on, Brian Kendrick won the championship at Hell in a Cell. Brian Kendrick is one of the lucky people to be still in the WWE. And one thing, most of the Cruiserweight, and I said this earlier, but most of the Cruiserweight champions have all left WWE or have gotten fired. I said that this is going to be a two-part series, but now we're going to go, I will talk about that later, but let's talk about the current state of 205 Live. Currently, there are basically no originals left. I don't even think that there are, because I'd say Brian Kendrick is the only one that counts, even though he's basically retired. But basically all the originals are gone because basically the two last originals who were there, Tony Nese and Ariya Daivari, were released from their contracts. Tony Nese is a former Cruiserweight champion, won it at WrestleMania 35. And Ariya Daivari has never won a Cruiserweight championship, but same with Nese. He is one of the best wrestlers who were on there. But then there were other wrestlers like Tyler Breeze and Buddy Murphy who have been released this year that I would count as 205 Live greats. Buddy Murphy is a former champion. Tyler Breeze may have not won, but really was a great competitor to see hop on a 205 Live when he did. So here's the list of Cruiserweight champions. TJ Perkins has been released and is currently wrestling in Impact Pro Wrestling, and he won in the Cruiserweight Classic finals against Grand Metalik. Brian Kendrick defeated TJ at Hell in a Cell 2016 and is one of the only wrestlers left from 205 Live, Cruiserweight champions, to not be released. Next we got Rick Swann. He is currently in Impact Pro Wrestling and lost his Impact Pro Wrestling Championship to Kenny Omega recently. Neville, he goes by Pac, and he won it. Pac, Neville is not in WWE anymore and is in AEW currently under the name Pac. He won it at the Royal Rumble. Next we got Akira Tozawa, one of the only ones who are Cruiserweight Champion, who are still in WWE. He's the current 24/7 champion at the beginning of as of the recording of this video. He won it on an episode of Raw. Then it was Neville, explained it earlier. Enzo Amore won it at No Mercy. Again, not in WWE anymore, and is currently on the indie circuit. Next is Kalisto, for the more recent releases. Got released after WrestleMania 37. He won the championship on an episode of Raw. Enzo already explained it, and it was vacated that Cedric Alexander were the only ones left. Won it at WrestleMania 34. And then Buddy Murphy. He's not in WWE anymore and was recently released. Nobody knows where he's going to go, but he won it at the original Super Showdown, and the only one in Australia. Tony Nese. He's not in WWE anymore, and he won it at WrestleMania 35. Drew Black still in the WWE and is lucky because he's probably going to get released any time now. And he won at Stomping Ground, same thing with Akira Tozawa. Leo Rush. He was most recently in AEW, but just retired even though he's so young. And he won it on an episode of NXT. And then Angel Garza, who is still in WWE, won it on an episode of NXT. Next we move on to Jordan Devlin, who had it for a very, very long time for the NXT UK. So he had it in NXT UK. He won it at Worlds Collide 2020. He's still in WWE. Now we move on to Santos Escobar, who is still in WWE and won it on an episode of NXT in 2020. Now it is Kushida, who is the current champion, who won it on NXT. Thank you to Wikipedia for giving me this list. One big question for me is, what's next for 205 Live? Do they cancel it and bring all the and get wrestlers to go from different shows? Is that what's going to happen with the Cruiserweight title? I think the Cruiserweight title is going to stay in NXT, but 205 Live is probably going to get canceled because most of the wrestlers who appear on it are literally from the Performance Center, with basically zero actual 205 Live appearances. That's just my opinion, but I am not a big fan of watching 205 Live. I only watch it if I'm bored after an episode of SmackDown. But let's talk about some wrestlers who never were Cruiserweight Champion, but did a good job at 205 Live. Mustafa Ali. Right now it's the Collins of Mustafa Ali. It's Mustafa. You've said that before, Ali. But he's currently on Raw in a rivalry with Mansoor, I guess. But yeah, he did an excellent job on 205 Live. Then we move on to Kalisto's former tag team partners who are still in WWE, the Lucha House Party, Lince Dorado, and Gran Metalik. I mean, they're definitely not on the same level as the rest of the wrestlers that I'm gonna name, but they were still pretty good if you ask me. They had some great matches. I said Arya Daivari earlier was recently released just last week at the time of this recording, but we will talk more about this on part 2. But thank you for watching part 1, when 205 Live died. Well, not died, but I guess you would say that. See ya!